Hello and welcome. Today we're reading Omnis determinatio est negatio, a paper by Yitzhak Melamed, an Israeli Hegelian philosopher. This will be a two-part series. We're going to read the paper and discuss Spinoza's and Kant's relation to Hegel, and I believe it will be very fruitful for our philosophical pursuit itself. So with that, Omnis determinatio est negatio. Determination, negation, and self-negation in Spinoza, Kant, and Hegel. Everything depends here on the correct understanding of the status and significance of negativity. That's a quote by Hegel. Introduction. Spinoza's letter of June 2nd, 1647, to his friend Jarek Jelles addresses several distinct and important issues in Spinoza's philosophy. It explains briefly the core of Spinoza's disagreement with Hobbes' political theory, develops his innovative understanding of numbers, and elaborates on Spinoza's refusal to describe God as one or single. The original Dutch text of the letter is lost. The opera posthuma relies on a Latin translation. Then, toward the end of the letter, Spinoza writes, with regard to the statement that figure is a negation and not anything positive, it is obvious that matter in its totality, considered without limitation, indeterminate consideratum, can have no figure, and that figure applies only to finite and determinate bodies. For he who says that he apprehends a figure thereby means to indicate simply this, that he apprehends a determinate thing and the manner of its determination. This determination, therefore, does not pertain to the thing in regards to its being. On the contrary, it is its non-being. So since figure is nothing but determination, and determination is negation, figure can be nothing other than negation, as has been said. Arguably, what is most notable about this letter is the fate of a single subordinate clause that appears in the last sentence of this passage, et determinatio negatio est. That clause was adopted by Hegel and transformed into the slogan of his own dialectical method, Omnis determinatio est negatio, every determination is negation. The universalized formulation, omnis, appears first in Hegel's 1816 review of Jacobi's Werken, see Hegel, Heidelberg. For the denotation of determinatio in classical Latin and in Descartes, see Ellen Gaby's most helpful study, Force and Inertia in the 17th Century, Descartes and Newton. Of further significance is the fact that while Hegel does credit Spinoza with the discovery of this most fundamental insight, he believes Spinoza failed to appreciate the importance of his discovery. Note 5, a similar attitude towards Spinoza can be found in Fichte. See his claim in this context that Spinoza forgets his very act of insight, the science of knowing, the 1804 lectures on the Wissenschaftslehre. The issue of negation and the possibility of self-negation stand at the very center of the philosophical dialogue between the systems of Spinoza and Hegel. And in this chapter, I will attempt to provide a preliminary explication of this foundational debate between the two systems. In the first part of the chapter, I will argue that the determination is negation formula has been understood in at least three distinct senses among the German idealists, and as a result, many of the participants in the discussion of this formula were actually talking past each other. The clarification of the three distinct senses of the formula will lead, in the second part of the paper, to a more precise evaluation of the fundamental debate between Spinoza and Hegel, and the German idealists in general, regarding the possibility or even necessity of self-negation. In this part, I will evaluate the validity of each interpretation of the determination formula and motivate the positions of the various participants in the debate.
Dimitri?
Yes.
Can you read that paragraph one more time?
The issue of negation and the possibility of self-negation stand at the very center of the philosophical dialogue between the systems of Spinoza and Hegel. And in this chapter, I will attempt to provide a preliminary explication of this foundational debate between the two systems. In the first part of the chapter, I will argue that the determination is negation formula has been understood in at least 3 distinct senses among the German idealists, and as a result, many of the participants in the discussion of this formula were actually talking past each other. The clarification of the 3 distinct senses of the formula will lead, in the second part of the chapter, to a more precise evaluation of the fundamental debate between Spinoza and Hegel, and the German idealists in general, regarding the possibility or even necessity of self-negation. In this part, I will evaluate the validity of each interpretation of the determination formula and motivate the positions of the various participants in the debate. A quarrel over a bewitched formula. The importance of the determination is negation formula for understanding Hegel's philosophy and German idealism in general is hardly disputed. Note 6, see, for example, D. Moyar, Hegel's Conscience, and P. Frank's All or Nothing. Yet a precise explanation of the meaning of this formula is still a desideratum. The main reason for the evasiveness of such an explanation is the fact that the formula has been used in several distinct ways by various philosophers, and sometimes perhaps in more than one way by the same philosopher. In this part, I will explain 3 distinct senses of the formula, who at first glance the differences among these explications of the one formula may appear as mere nuances. The immediate implications of these nuances turn out to be substantial. Sense A, determination is negation as asserting the unreality of the finite. According to this reading, the formula states that 1, God, or the infinite, is absolutely indeterminate, while finite things are just determinations, limitations, or negations of the absolutely infinite, or of the absolutely indeterminate. Note 7. This view may already appear in Descartes. See his 5th set of replies. All limitation applies a negation of the infinite. This point is essential for Descartes' argument in the 3rd meditation that our notion of the infinite is prior to the finite and thus cannot be constructed from the finite. Yet it is unclear whether for Descartes the infinite, that is God, is absolutely indeterminate as in medieval negative theology, or maximally determined, that is, having all determination perfections. See the discussion of the 3rd interpretation of the determinatio formula below. In addition, this reading accepts that too, what is merely negation or determination of the finite is not fully real. Such a reading of the formula is the way that Maimon, Jacobi, and Hegel understood Spinoza's claims. And for each of the 3, this interpretation of the determination is negation formula played a crucial role in their general reconstruction of Spinoza's philosophy. In his Strijferijen im Gebiete der Philosophie, 1793, Maimon writes, Spinoza claims with Parmenides only the real, das Reale, which is comprehended by the understanding, exists. What is linked with the real in a finite being is nothing but a limitation, Einschränkung, of the real, a negation to which no existence can be ascribed. Note 8 is a translation of the quote. Similarly, in his autobiography, Maimon stresses the same point as the common element between Spinoza and the Kabbalah. In fact, the Kabbalah is nothing but expanded Spinozism, in which not only is the origin of the world explained by the limitation, Einschränkung, of the divine being, but also the origin of every kind of being and its relation to the rest is derived from a separate attribute of God. God, as the ultimate subject and the ultimate cause of all beings, is called Ein Sof, the infinite of which, considered in itself, nothing can be predicated. Note 9 is the reference. In both passages, Maimon suggests that for Spinoza, finite things are merely limitations or negations of the real, that is, God, which in itself has no predicates. Relying on this interpretation, Maimon suggests that Spinoza is wrongly described as an atheist, since in fact in his system only God truly exists. Thus, Maimon argues Spinoza's system should be called acosmism, since it denies the reality of the world of finite things, the cosmos, rather than the reality of God. Note 10. See Maimon Lebensgeschichte on Maimon's reading of Spinoza and other readings. On the acosmist interpretation of Spinoza among the German idealists, see Melamed Acosmism or Weak Individuals, Hegel, Spinoza, and the Reality of the Finite in the Journal of History of Philosophy. It is noteworthy that Maimon not only ascribed acosmism to Spinoza, but in fact adhered to this view himself already in his earliest Hebrew writings. Note 11. In his 1778 Hebrew manuscript, Solomon's Desire, Maimon writes, "It is impossible to conceive any other existence but his. May he be blessed, no matter whether it is a substantial or an accidental existence. And this is the secret of the aforementioned unity, namely, that only God, may he be blessed, exists, and that nothing but him has any existence at all." Jacobi presents a similar view regarding the reality of finite things in Spinoza in his 1785 book Über die Lehre des Spinoza in Briefen an den Herrn Moses Mendelssohn. Determinatio negatio est, sui determinatio ad rem juxtasum est non pertinet. I'm gonna stop reading that Latin. Determination is negation, or determination does not pertain to a thing according to its being. Individual things, die einzelnen Dinge, therefore, so far as they only exist in a certain determinate mode, are non-entia. The indeterminate infinite being, das unbestimmte unendliche Wesen, is the single true ens reale, hoc est omne es et prater quod nullum datur esse. What does that mean? The phrase hoc est the blah 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 is taken from the end of paragraph 76 of Spinoza's TIE. The phrase is not easy to translate. Most English translations of this phrase regrettably neglect the est omne est, is all being, which I believe is quite crucial for a helpful discussion of the pantheismus-strijd and Jacobi's reading of Spinoza. See this paper. Finally, Hegel portrays this view in some detail in his lectures on the history of philosophy and takes it to be Spinoza's single most important insight. With regard to the determinate, Spinoza established in his thesis Omnis determinatio est negatio, establishing this thesis. Hence, only the non-particularized or the universal is. It alone is what is substantial and therefore truly actual. As a singular thing, the soul or the mind is something limited. It is by negation that a singular thing is. Therefore, the singular thing does not have genuine actuality. This, on the whole, is Spinoza's idea. Again, from the lectures on philosophy. And there's the note continues. Of a truth, there exists the one into which everything enters, in order to be absorbed therein, but out of which nothing comes. For, as Spinoza set up the great proposition, all determination implies negation, and as of everything, even of thought in contrast to extension, it may be shown that it is determined and finite. What is essential in it rests upon negation. Notice the inference in the penultimate sentence of the above paragraph. Finite or singular things do not have genuine actuality because they are just negations. Roughly the same interpretation of the formula also appears in Hegel's lectures on logic and in the science of logic. Spinoza said all determination is negation. That is an important principle which was especially important to Spinoza. Relative to Spinoza's one, everything else is determinate, and everything determinate is negation. That determinateness is negation, posited as affirmative, is Spinoza's proposition, Omnis determinatio est negatio, a proposition of infinite importance. The unity of Spinoza's substance, or that there is only one substance, is the necessary consequence of this proposition. That determinateness is negation. Spinoza conceived thought and extension as attributes, that is, such as do not have a particular subsistence, a being in and for itself, but only are as sublated as moments, or rather, since substance is the total void of internal determinateness, they are not even moments. The attributes, like the modes, are distinctions made by the external understanding. Also, the substantiality of individuals cannot hold its own before that substance. The individual refers to itself by setting limits, grenzen, to every other. But these limits are therefore also the limits of itself. They are the references to the other. The individual's existence is not in the individual. Hegel in the Science of Logic. According to Hegel, Spinoza considers finite things as mere determinations or negations of the one, and things that are mere negations of the other cannot be said to have a genuine and independent existence. As a result, Hegel adopts Maimon's claim that the proper description of Spinoza's philosophy should be called acosmism rather than atheism. Note 16. See Hegel in Lectures of Logic, page 49. In Spinoza's system, God alone is. What is other than God is a being that at once is not a being, and so is show or shine. Thus, it cannot be said that Spinozism is atheism. It is rather the exact contrary of atheism, namely acosmism. The world is no true being. There is no world. Rather, God, and God alone is. Note 16. B, the second formula of the determination. Determination is negation as a slogan of universal dialectic. According to Michael Inwood, Hegel endorses Spinoza's claim that determination is negation, that is, that a thing or a concept is determinate only in virtue of a contrast with other things or concepts which are determined in a way that it is not. Note 17. This reading of determination is negation is very close to Fichte's law of reflective opposition. It is only through opposition that it is possible to obtain a specific and clear consciousness of anything whatsoever. That's very interesting. Inwood, Elegant's formula states the principle of Hegel's own dialectic, yet, as far as I can see it, it states a view Hegel thought Spinoza should have endorsed, though in fact Spinoza fell short of doing so. The main difference between the acosmist A and the dialectical B interpretations of determinatio negatio est formula is that the latter, but not the former, makes the infinite and finite mutually negate each other. In other words, according to the dialectical reading of the formula, not only is the finite a determination or negation of the infinite, but also the infinite or indeterminate is a negation of the finite. According to the acosmist reading, it is only finite things that are what they are by virtue of negating their opposition. But the dialectical reading expands the scope of the last principle and makes it universal. Anything, either finite or infinite, is what it is by virtue of its opposition to what it is not. Hegel, the absolute madman, frequently develops the dialectical reading of the formula as part of a critique of Spinoza's more restricted reading. In these cases, Hegel stresses that while Spinoza's discovery is truly important, his understanding of the formula is one-sided, insofar as it fails to realize that there is an internal negativity in the very notion of the infinite. According to Hegel, Spinoza fails to realize that the infinite is essentially a negation of negation, that is, a negation of the finite, which Hegel claims Spinoza acknowledges as being merely negative. Let us have a look at a few passages in which Hegel develops his critique of Spinoza. Determinateness is negation, is the absolute principle of Spinozist philosophy. This true and simple insight is at the basis of the absolute unity of substance. But Spinoza stops short at negation as determinateness or quality. He does not advance to the cognition of it as absolute, that is, self-negating negation. Note 18, it's Hegel in the Science of Logic. The Spinozistic determination of infinity, by which infinity is the unlimited affirmation of any manner, is one-sided since it does not include infinity as negation of the negation. The true infinity, I would add, as opposed to the slechte Unendlichkeit, or like the bad infinity, is that which remains identical with itself through mediation. That's extremely important. 19, that's him in the Lectures on Logic on page 109. How precisely is the view of infinity as negation of negation, that is, negation of the finite, related to Spinoza's reading of determinatio negatio est? The following passage from Hegel's 1816 review of Jacobi's Werke seems to be crucial in this context. Notice that in the second sentence of the passage, Hegel points out a major shortcoming of Spinoza's formula. Let's see. Everything depends here on the correct understanding of the status and significance of negativity. If it is taken only to be the determinateness of finite things, omnis determinatio est negatio, then we're already thinking of it outside of absolute substance and have allowed finite things to fall outside of it. Our imagination maintains them outside of absolute substance. Conceived of in this way, however, negation fails to be seen as internal to the infinite or internal to substance, which is supposed rather to be the sublated being of finite things. Yet, the manner in which negation is internal to substance has in fact thus already been said. Substance is supposed to be the sublation of the finite, and that is just to say that it is the negation of negation, since it is precisely negation which we took to be definitive of the finite. That's bars right there.
Can you read that again, Dimitri?
Yeah, that's, I will. Hegel in Heidelberg Writings, my family lives there. Hegel continues the passage by arguing that negation of negation is the condition for the emergence of freedom and subjectivity. I do not address these crucial claims here because he doesn't have the space. That makes a lot of sense. These are so crucial. So again, from the Heidelberg Writings, Hegel, everything depends here on the correct understanding of the status and significance of negativity. If it is taken only to be the determinateness of the finite things, omnis determinatio est negatio, then we are already thinking of it outside of absolute substance, and we have allowed finite things to fall outside of it, absolute substance. Our imagination maintains them outside of absolute substance. Conceived of in this way, however, negation fails to be seen as internal to the infinite, or internal to substance, which is supposed rather to be the sublated being of finite things. Yet, the manner in which negation is internal to substance has in fact thus already been said. Substance is supposed to be the sublation of the finite, and that is just to say that it is the negation of the negation, since it is precisely negation which we took to be definitive of the finite.
Can we reflect here? So
Sure.
far?
Sure.
That is a lot to take in. I'm gonna have to go soon anyway. What's your thoughts, Dimitri? This is real philosophy. By the way,
yeah.
I put that stuff into the chat there. This is real philosophy, not this shit about, you know, dismissing Hegel or Plato. This is good shit.
This is very good shit.
Yeah, this is really what it's all about. You know, the good German Hegelian friend of mine recommended me this paper, and Spinoza is the second most referenced in Hegel's Science of Logic. So, I mean, he's not being hyperbolic, Hegel. I think that's really crucial. He's not being hyperbolic when he says everything depends here on the correct understanding of the status and significance of negativity. Because I think what comes out to me in this quote is that, okay, we have absolute substance. And of course, we've talked about substance before. It's substare, is that which basically underlies everything that is transient. Like substance is that which is truthful, it's abiding, it's that which we philosophers would often like to ground ourselves in, because it is the very ground of subject as that which is reliant on substance in the technical way. So if we say omnis determinatio as negatio and say that, okay, we have a finite thing, let's be very simple. I have here a book of Schopenhauer. This is a book written by Schopenhauer, so that's a determination. Therefore, I'm also saying that this cup is not the book written by Schopenhauer. So therefore, I'm negating by saying this is the book of Schopenhauer. Very simple. Right. But if I say that negation is only present in the realm of the finite phenomenal realm, to put it in some kind of Kantian language, then this prevents us from actually cognizing absolute substance, which Hegel claims is possible that we can do, which is, that's really like basically those kind of suppositions are where the radicality of Hegel.
You fall outside of the absolute, right?
Can we just slow it down and retrack again that terrain that you've just traveled? So you've gone up to, because what we're talking about is opposition. We're talking about opposition in order to distinction. It's like if I don't have the opposites, I don't have me, in a sense. We're talking like in Plato, he says in his tripartition of the soul, his tripartition of the soul is based on the principle of non-contradiction. That I have phenomenologically in myself, I have this radical conflict of desire. I want to go to the gym to lift weights and be good, but I also don't want to go to the gym because I want to have sweets and I've done enough going to the gym. So I have this radical conflict of desire. And he says, you cannot have something at the same time, at the same place, in the same moment, contradict itself. I can't, as Max, want to go to the gym and not want to go to the gym at the same time. So there has to be this division.
That's a good way to look at it, yeah.
A division of opposites. And what we're bringing in here is this determinate negation. And there's a linking between this idea of opposites in the determinate negation. So can you just go back and reflect on what I've said, and then we'll bring in the absolute, how that relates to the absolute.
Yeah, Jason, what are your reflections?
So my first question, and this is, let's discuss this maybe. How would you describe determination, right? The way, and this is how I see it, in the lectures, the example that was used was the rose is red. This is to me, that's a determination, like, but here's the feature of that. The rose and red, they're both phenomenal objects. But what is this interconnection is? It doesn't refer, what is this is, right? Which is to say, how does the rose is determined to be red? And when you ask this question, this will lead back to you, the subject, because you are positing the rose. You are sustaining the rose. You are sustaining the redness of the rose. You are sustaining the spatial intuition, to put it in the Kantian framework. But so the is you, and this is why I think determination is being itself, because is a universal. The is universal. The is the same when you say the fire truck is red, the jeans are tight, something like that. The is constant. It constantly is a reference back to the subject, which is being itself, which is how stuff is just is, right? There's no other explanation. It's just is. And the way I think about this, so what does it mean, right? All determination is negation. That's the formula in the beginning. And this makes a case that there's at least two ways to look at it. Obviously, what's being determined or something is less real than the determination. So the rose, the red, they are phenomenal objects. They are less real, let's say, than the is. The is the most real thing in this relationship. I'm sorry, guys, if I'm talking too long here. Am I coherent?
Yeah,
I'm trying to move on the way.
We are here to take time and meditate on this. Take as long as you want.
Okay, perfect. So there's an unreality to what's being determined by determination. So that is being negated, and therefore it's sublated, right? This what's not real is negated by you, and it appears as if the rose is real. This rose is of course real. You kind of you made it real in your head. You've connected the dots. So that's the second view, right? Determination is, no, I'm sorry, that has to do with, maybe I'm jumping too far here, because that's the infinite is negation of negation.
Can I come in here?
Please, yeah. Maybe this is, yeah,
with some Hegel. So finite and infinite. What is he? What German words is he using? Endlich and unendlich. So end is end in German, and endlich means ending. This would be a literal translation. Unendlich is unending. That's translated to finite and infinite, but I think to see that ending and unending, it can be helpful. For example, Hegel in the Phenomenology of Spirit says truth cannot lose anything by being written down. Now, in the lectures of logic, he says truth is infinite. So how does that work? If I say, this book of Schopenhauer, probably in 10,000 years, there's not going to be this book anymore. That means this thing is coming to an end. This determination is a determination of a finite object that will be negated through time. Like the negation itself will be negated, but what subsists that, what is the substance of it, is the indeterminate one, which is Spinoza's God, and this is acosmism. Atheism is the no God. I don't believe in God. Like I love what Marx said about atheism. He said, like, atheists are like the people who are like children who say, I'm really not scared of the boogeyman, and keep telling you this. Anyway, that's a tangent. So, acosmism, the negation of the cosmos as the world. Well, Hegel's metaphysical triad is world, cosmos, cosmology, the soul, rational psychology, as he calls it, and God, I believe. But anyway, acosmos is, so it's the negation of the cosmos, because in the cosmos we have all these finite objects, but the one which underlies that is the absolute substance which abides all of this. And I would say that, this is kind of like the, so okay,
wait, I think so just this got me thinking about the here. Yeah, go ahead, Max. Sorry.
So several things. Number one, are we sort of saying that there is a monism here, that there's an underlying Parmenidean sort of substance that is the acosmism? Because what I was thinking of is this sort of idealism reminded me of Berkeley, where we all exist in this.
You exist in the you're beholden by another person. Yeah.
By God. God
Yeah.
is the sort of foundational metaphysical
Perspective.
life force.
Yeah.
And I mean, is there? Yeah. So is it monism? And we have this idea of infinite versus finite, and how do they interact? Is it you know, are they two is it dualism? I mean, I'm just a bit confused as to.
Yeah.
So
I would like to,
yeah, if you
can I
want to
just jump in?
because I also have an answer. Also,
Yeah. That will be interesting.
You first.
I think Spinoza is definitely a monist. I would say that, and I think that the indeterminacy of the one as God, as the one substance itself, is a monist idea. Hegel calls it acosmism. That's a cool way to think of it. Actually, it's way more interesting than saying it's atheism or pantheism.
Yeah.
But I think like this idea of is it what substance is subject, right? So, and what is subject? This guy didn't want to go into it in the paper itself, but I think it really comes to the forefront in this quote by Hegel. He says, then we are already thinking of it outside of absolute substance and have allowed finite things to fall outside of it. Our imagination maintains them outside. Conceived of in this way, however, negation fails to be seen as internal to the infinite or internal to substance. And what is negation of substance internal to substance? It's subject. And this is what substance also is. So my preferred way of denoting this is non-monism. Not non-dualism, not dualism, not monism, but non-monism. I really like this.
Beautiful. That is very beautiful. Yeah. That's a really great way. The way I think about it, and I agree with everything you said. That's very nice. That's a nice way to think about it. It's interesting. There's actually so many ways we can think about this. I think it's to do I'll connect subject to our earlier conversation about negation and determination here. I think the author is saying like there's nuances in how we can think of like determination is negation. The differences between negation and negation itself and self-negation. And I would say self-negation is subject. That's what Hegel is saying, I think, because it includes this internality, right? There is an internality to it. What is this internality in the negation? It is possibility and necessity. So when that's what the necessity is, the I guess determinate negation, right? Because a thing has to be that thing, and the possibility is there is a sense of internality. Like Max was saying earlier, how could I sustain two modes of being, one with this emotion, another with this emotion? This desire is competing with that desire. Is because you have an internality, which is to say you have possibilities. And that's the other kind of negation doesn't have this. They just negate each other. And therefore we have two kinds of infinities, right? We have infinity as, let's say, a thing negated into another thing, negated into another thing. And then we have the other infinity being negation of the negation. One is basically, there's a chair, there's a table, there's a floor, the ceiling ad infinitum. The other one is, well, first of all, what's the problem with that? Why do we think there should be negation of negation as infinite? It's because when you do this, you posit like an outside of it. I think that's the way I think of it. You're no longer in the absolute. You've let the finite things fall into its own absolute.
Would you say then that's where you're setting up deceitful dualism.
I think that sets up the seat for something like the noumenon and dualism, absolutely. Because then objects, as it were, have their own internality, but it's a false internality because they can just be, again, it could be just a list of things, a list of every single atom in the world and so on. But infinity through the negation of the negation is actually more, let's say, less image thinking. It's more imageless because what you're doing is you're literally negating the finite. There you get infinity. That's how I think of it. The ability to negate the finite into another thing. So as we go back to the earlier quote, right? The rose is red. This ability for you to negate the rose into red, into the shape of the rose, into the weight of the rose, that kind of thinking doesn't fall outside of the absolute. You're not, as it were, outside of the absolute looking down. It's not image thinking. That's how how I can put it. Any comment?
Yeah, I mean,
just can I put in here? Negation. You're talking about this red rose.
Yeah.
What is the role of?
I gotta have an angle.
Identity and difference. We're making these distinctions.
Yeah.
I'm actually been able to. We were talking about this the other day. If you were there, Dimitri, yeah, you were, about this struggle for reality. You have opposition and sameness. We're making these distinctions. We're determining this is red and it's not blue.
So this is interesting. We can go back to the real issue in the book, which is to say, is God, is there a one God or not? Is God a one, right? And I think this is very telling of the situation, because Hegel says somewhere in the phenomenology that identity is necessarily difference. You can't really have one without the other. Whenever you posit a difference, there's always identity. And this makes God, and this is why Hegel's criticism of Spinoza in the bad infinity criticism is, I think, awesome. It's such a small difference. It's such a different nuance, creates such a different kind of God, as you say, as Dimitri was saying, non-monist. That's, I believe it has to do with this sort of inability to describe God as a one, because God is both difference and identity simultaneously.
Right. Okay.
So God is not this thing you can point at. When you point to God, it is as if you establish a space between you and God, but there is no such thing.
So in regards to infinity and God, we have this sort of simultaneous difference and identity at the same time. But in regards to finitude, we're saying that negation, or determinate negation, is the recognition that something has a certain identity.
It's a recognition of being, I think, because what is the is, right? In my view, the is being itself, because, and Spinoza agrees here with Hegel. This is where the both of them agree that the universal is more real than the particular. So the is
so actually, we're in the problem. We're in the age-old problem of universals over particulars.
Yeah. So, but here's why Hegel is. I think this criticism is insane. It's almost mind-blowing to me how little it is. How it's like a smidge on the top that's changed, because again, it has to do with these two different infinites, I think. I kind of lost my train of thought, honestly.
Yeah, I think so. We have bad infinity and true infinity.
Yeah.
Hegel makes, and the bad infinity is like
in math,
it's like when it
go ahead.
Sorry. Oh yeah, in math you can have examples with that, but it's also like when you're with a child and you say something, it says why, and then you say something else why, and you say something why, like, and that's just bad infinity, because it ain't going nowhere. It's just trying to annoy you.
Absolutely
But
correct.
the true, yeah, they won't get me, these fucking children. I see through their game. But
There's one reason to murder your child is when they ask why.
I agree. I agree. They haven't gotten to the true infinity of
Yeah.
the absolute. So this the true infinity. That's the I mean that's the indeterminate one.
Sublation. Yeah.
That for Spinoza, it's the indeterminate one.
That's right.
As God.
Right.
Hegel.
Well,
yeah.
Hegel maintains indeterminacy in a really weird way.
Yeah, that's true.
Hegel's indeterminacy is not complexity, I argue. It's more about an open future. It's a temporality claim. So his claim is that this thing is not real yet. It hasn't existed yet. The future is unraveling constantly. And the other kind of indeterminacy would be like a black box indeterminacy, where I don't know what's going on in there. It's just there's an affair there that I have no access to. I think that's a radical difference. In mathematics, there's actually just to add to the example, there's countable infinity and non-countable infinity. And one is just 1, 2, 3, and the non-countable is like 1, 1.1, 1.2, and so on.
So can I just because we've been talking here for a while, in 3 or 4 sentences each, what is the essential aspect that we need to go and meditate on in regards to negation and determinate negation?
Damn.
You go first.
Okay. I love how confident I am.
And concise.
In terms of determination.
4 sentences.
Okay. Determination, determinate negation. Okay. Determination per se is again the ability to see properties in object, or the ability to delineate an object amongst other objects. That's a determination. Determinate negation is when you conceive that in terms of your consciousness. You return it. I like to say when you're looking for the determinate negation, you link it back to yourself. You link it back to your mode of consciousness. That's what determinate negation. And then you get what is it about. So determinate negation is when you ask what the relationship is about rather than what is. That's it. That's how I put it.
Okay, so oh fuck.
I could be super wrong about all this shit. I don't even know.
Yeah, well, so there's
a risk.
Let's go with the phenomenology of spirit, Hegel, because it's hard to talk about Hegel's system when you haven't read Science of Logic.
Yes.
I think it's kenosis really describes Hegel's phenomenology of spirit well. That means that it is the emptying out of God himself through time, where you end up with the empty subjectivity, or like a pure observatory standpoint of being, which is the ground of science from which you can actually be a fucking proper philosopher.
Right.
I think the trap is to fall into abstract negation, which doesn't lead anywhere. So substance is the sublation of the infinite, which means substance is the negation of the negation, as the negation of the finite. And that means that, okay, so what's the problem with abstract negation? You're saying, oh yeah, Plato is bullshit. Okay, and then where do we go then? You know, like if you look at all these philosophers and just abstractly negate them instead of taking them up into the process of becoming, you're not doing philosophy. You can do it, and hey, maybe you even whatever, you will get a following and you become popular, but it's not philosophy.
Yeah.
So
the content of Plato is not, I argue, is not the stupid every single word of Plato. That's this negation.
So determinate negation is sublating all of the stages of consciousness that you've gone through.
Right.
You are a determinate negation, Max.
Well, yeah, okay.
Yeah, no, like literally, like you yourself, the self is a determinate negation.
Yes. Okay, so I'm going to meditate on this because it seems that in
That's a
some
good way,
ways we have this sort of immediate recognition of difference in indeterminate negation, but then we also have this other aspect of going through stages similar to Plato's cave.
I think also
Towards the
an
infinite.
important takeaway is how do we save the particular in the infinite? You know, the particular in what is the particular to the universal and vice versa. Spinoza is saying the particular is not real. Hegel is in a way trying to save the particular as well. So that would be something to think about.
How do you think so?
Because again, for Spinoza, the what is it again? The specific attributes of it, or the most, I forgot the lingo, but that's not substance, right? Substance is the most real one. But again, because Spinoza has, let's say, follows this bad infinity type negation. Supposedly, I perhaps we need
Just
really
quickly on this, I'm going to have to
very
go
quickly,
now.
yeah.
This reminds me of Hegel's Hermeticism by Alexander McGee, where you have the Hermetics wanting to have a close relationship with God, and they're wondering why God creates human beings, because God is infinite and all-knowing and doesn't need it. So they have this idea that the infinite God, the absolute, creates a finite for it to look back on itself. So you have this sort of the universe for the first time becoming conscious of itself through the subject.
Right, but exactly. You need a God that has an interiority as well. You know, you need a God that is possible. You know, God can do stuff.
But
And
also,
yeah,
oh, go ahead.
no, but Spinoza's God is a God that has no need, as it were. Everything is just is. But Hegel
I don't think Hegel would say that. I think
really?
I think Hegel would say something different. I think exactly
I gotta
that.
go, guys. I gotta
Alright.
go. I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, nice having you here.
Thanks,
See you
Dimitri.
later.
Thanks.
You should come more often. Okay.
Okay, so I don't think that is I don't think that holds up
Okay.
because Hegel says if God is in the world, his power is also in it. God is what negates the finite. In God, what is finite falls to the ground, but what falls to the ground passes into its ground, and in its ground it is raised up again. This worldly being, as being outside one another, is merely negated. And thought in its one-sidedness is also raised up in this unity of the finite and the infinite. That's Hegel's in the lecture of logic. I think this is what Hegel means by acosmism.
Oh, I mean, but from what I hear there, I'm not saying Hegel believes in, what did I say, right? That is something, because I thought, well, okay, let me rephrase it. What I'm trying to say is that Spinoza's God it's not as self-referential, let's say, as Hegel's God. It's not as internally related. But maybe let's move on.
But that's okay. That's
Hegel is the one. Yeah.
I think that's an interesting question because what it seems to me that Hegel says that Spinoza's God has to be like that.
Because it's a cosmic, I see.
Yes, because you go, I think that's the thing, right? You go through the cosmic to have the acosmic.
Right.
Like you have you have
so
God.
It's not just cosmic. That's true, actually. Yeah.
You need the fall. It's like that's the Zizekian whole Zizekian project. It's not you need the fall to get to the very substance.
But here something. And I think what you said was super useful. There's the acosmic and then there's the non-monis, as you put it. And I think the non-monis is the one with that can have a self-reference, whereas the acosmic is again merely a negation of the cosmos itself, right? It's literally a negation of the world, because the world is just an appearance of substance.
Okay, so I have a question about this. He says, if it is taken only to be the determinateness of the finite things, Omnis determinatio as negatio, then we are already thinking of it outside of absolute substance and have allowed finite things to fall outside of it.
That's what I was talking about earlier.
He says our imagination maintains them outside of absolute substance. So can we say that actually Spinoza's what's colloquially called pantheism or monism is actually as a deceitful dualistic element to it? Because you are already outside of absolute substance by positing that very thing.
Right. Again, it sets up the stage for a noumena, because objects can just relate to each other outside of you, right? Because you are outside, you are assuming that there is you, and then there's the object, and then there's the space between you. There's no connection between you and the object. You're not in the absolute. And that's why it's like a perspective, right? If the absolute is the total perspective, so one perspective, then you cannot have, let's say, your own internality and then objects having a relationship outside of it. And one, does this make sense?
Well, okay. I'm struggling to understand.
Yeah, let me find the specific quote so I can be very careful about what I say. I do have my own big ideas. So where did you find that?
My point?
Yeah.
I mean, what?
No, that quote just now that you read.
Oh, that's Hegel and the Science of, or in the lectures on. I'll send it in the chat.
Okay.
Here you go.
No. You read it from here, from our reading.
From the PDF.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll share my screen again.
Here it is. There we go. Okay. Oh no, not this one. Not this quote. The one you just said just now.
Oh, that's the
something outside of the absolute.
If God is in the world, his power is also in it. God is what negates the finite.
Yeah.
God, what is finite, falls to the ground. But what falls to the ground passes into its ground, and in its ground it is raised up again. This worldly being, as being outside one another, is merely negated, and thought in its one-sidedness is also raised up into its unity of the finite and the infinite.
Wait, so yeah, okay, so it is this one. Never mind. Yeah, here we go. So here's the difference. The worldly being as being outside one another. So is it as it were, you have this outside of it, there's that. You know what I mean? It's like, but what is this outside? This outside is that's what I'm saying. This is what I mean by there's you, the object, and the space. It's like there is a third perspective, this outside. And this is I think what's not counted in maybe Spinoza is so imaginative, and I mean this in the best way possible, that he's literally in image thinking. He takes image thinking to his divine stratospheres, but
how do you think he does it? Why,
I think it has to do with his love of nature, because nature presents us with this kind of infinite image, right?
Right.
Nature presents us with nature is a kind of noumenon when you think about it, if you think of it naively, right? Look, if we look at climate change, for instance, it's the biggest black box, because a lot of people are saying, oh, we cannot know what it is, or something like that, something along those lines.
Would you say that spirit is higher than nature?
Well, that would be in my view, you're looking for a determinate negation for it, because you're talking desire now, right? So the object is explained away in a relation to the subject. If you're just talking about objects having an outside to the other object, look at the way limit was talked about earlier, right? It's a relationship you have to the other object. You are not this. So an object can just have their own relationship out there. outside of our own internality. But here's where the duality comes from. There is our internality, and then their relationship, this being outside of one another.
Okay, so I have two ideas about this. First is animals are universal, but they don't know that they are.
Right.
Animals only become universal when we enter the stage.
Well, I mean,
we make animals universal, but they
yeah.
Also, to add to this necessity, there is no necessity as such, like necessity only comes to fruition when we posit necessity.
Well, is it? I mean, you can also
if necessary things, there are things that are necessary, right? The best is necessary. But I think that this necessity is not. How do I explain this? Like, I think
yeah,
the necessity of it, maybe it becomes like in itself to for itself.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah,
But
yeah.
I do think like, look,
the
I think
necessity is the connection of the for itself to the in itself. Right, the for itself cannot just float about on its own. It has to have like an in itself.
well, I was gonna say that things are like necessary in themselves.
Yeah, yeah, things are necessary. Yeah, right.
Actually,
But like to go back
this is too easy, maybe.
yeah. No, I
It's too easy.
think we misunderstood. There's a small short.
But I do think spirit is higher than nature, because otherwise
Right.
we are not
Well, I
responsible
mean,
for nature, and we are.
I wonder, maybe this will end up being the difference in our flavors of Hegelianism. Like to go back
Why?
to go back to the animal thing very quickly, and then you can respond.
Hmm.
I think it's equally true that animals are particulars. I mean, you know, I don't think like okay, the way German poets think of an animal, oh, it's just concerned for its own survival. It's just fucking living. It's a very this type of
Yeah.
thing. Animals become universal through us, actually, I would argue, because we establish the species, we establish like when you do like a family tree, right? You're universalizing the particulars, right? You're making, oh, that is the uncle of that, oh, that is the but this uncle is a universal, right? You can, is it, my relationship with my uncle is the same as your relationship to your uncle, and so on. So I think when we say universal, it's like humans have the ability to activate the universal, and maybe this is something that animals lack. Maybe or animals do, but they don't negate the negation. Let's say, you're they don't like I think writing things down the way Hegel puts it is a form of negating the negation, because here I have a thing I created that's not part of the flux that I can look back. It's an extension of your mind, so an extension of your memory, rather than an object, an ordinary object that flows in time. Go ahead. What do you think? See, two different flavors.
Well, no, we're both studying it still.
Yeah, we're both probably super.
So if we have different flavors, we aren't reading Hegel directly enough. Probably.
That's true. That's very true, actually.
Um,
but I don't know. Maybe go ahead, you first. But I do have. I've been thinking about this for a bit, actually. But
yeah, with the animals.
I may have a response to that, but yeah, go ahead.
I mean, the question is some look in sense certainty. The sense consciousness seems to be preoccupied with the particular. It doesn't know that it's already like proclaiming the universal.
Yeah.
So,
but that's what I mean by activating the universal, like the animal. Yeah, so I
but
guess
is
you're
that the
correct.
activation, or is that the making explicit of something that was implicit?
But that's activation to me. That's
Okay.
yeah. Like you're,
Okay.
yeah. It's not. It's yeah. Yes to both.
Okay.
I mean,
Okay. Let's stop the recording here.
yeah.